It's one of the world's deadliest diseases. It's highly infectious and there's no known cure. An outbreak of the Ebola virus is confirmed in Uganda. Africa appears to be most vulnerable to the disease, but can medical staff there cope? And what's being done elsewhere to find a cure? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Darine Abougaida. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni is urging people to avoid all physical contact. That's after an outbreak of the deadly Ebola virus. 14 people have died since the disease was confirmed in the Kibaale district in Midwest Uganda 3 weeks ago. And it's now reached the capital, Kampala, where one person has already died. From there, our correspondent Malcolm Webb has this report.
It starts with fever and nausea, and there's a very high chance it ends with internal and external bleeding and then death. There's no known cure or vaccine for Ebola, and people are scared of an epidemic spreading across the country. The president has urged Ugandans to be careful.
Ebola, they should be handled by medical workers wearing protective gear. So I therefore appeal to you to be vigilant, avoid shaking of hands, do not take on burying somebody who has died from symptoms which look like Ebola. Instead, call the health workers to be the ones to do it. And avoid promiscuity, because these sicknesses can also go through sex.
In this home in western Uganda, 3 people already died. The virus is easily spread through contact with any body fluids, even sweat. This is where suspected victims were buried, and even that's not safe. Tradition runs strong here. People want to bury their dead at home. But the corpses are also highly contagious. Officials say they need to be disposed of by experts, and that everyone who came close needs to be tracked down.
So far we have 34 contacts of health workers from the hospital. These are being traced who have ever come in contact with the patients. But then the community tracing is also beginning. So as my colleagues mentioned, the number will keep increasing as we trace the contacts more.
One of those who already died had travelled here to the National Referral Hospital in the capital, Kampala. She caught the disease in western Uganda. Some people here have already stopped shaking hands to greet. Instead, they touch elbows because they're scared of catching the disease. By day, it's a busy and crowded city, and so everyone's hoping that the virus has not already been transmitted here. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera, Kampala, Uganda.
So is the world doing enough to fight Ebola? To answer this question, we're joined by our guests in Geneva, Gregory Härtl. He's the coordinator of the Media Relations Department of Communications at the Director General's Office of the World Health Organization. Also in Geneva, Amanda McClelland. She's a Senior Emergency Health Officer and Acting Health Coordinator for Africa at the IFRC. In Brussels, Dr. Michel van Herp from Doctors Without Borders. He's an epidemiologist and the Ebola specialist for the agency. Good to have you with us all in this edition of Inside Story. Gregory, give us a sense of just how serious this outbreak is in Uganda.
Sure. Any Ebola outbreak is serious by the nature of it being a viral hemorrhagic fever, which, depending on its strain, can kill up to 90% of the people it infects. And as we know, there's no medicine and there's no vaccine. So we take any viral hemorrhagic fever event very seriously. We don't know the scope of this event yet. We know that there are 36 suspected cases, of which 4 have been confirmed as Ebola. We know that there are, I believe, 14 deaths as of the last count. This is something that is very serious.
So what is the WHO doing to try and contain the spread of the disease?
Yeah, first of all, it's the Ministry of Health of Uganda, as would be the case in any event. It's the National Ministry of Health who leads. And WHO is there to help support along with other organizations. There are probably 5 key elements we're looking at the moment to help support, or maybe 6, infection control, case management, contact tracing, laboratory skills, capacity identification of the virus, communications both at a local community level to help people understand what's going on in the communities and at an international level. And finally also logistics or logistical support to get supplies into the affected areas.
And Gregory, your organization, in fact, the WHO, describes Ebola as, quote, one of the most virulent viral diseases known to man. So how is it that Ebola actually spreads? Ebola is a virus which can be spread either through simple touch with the skin of someone else or through contact with simple touch of the skin of an infected person, or with contact of the bodily fluids, any of the bodily fluids of an infected person. Amanda, over to you. And one person, as we're reporting, in fact, has died in the capital, Kampala. That's what we're hearing at this point. What is the concern about Kampala and Ebola spreading to more densely populated areas in Uganda?
The World Health Organization is probably in a better position to answer that. My understanding is that that death in Kampala was a case that was transferred from the affected area for medical treatment following proper infectious disease control strategies. So at the moment, my understanding is that there's no active case that's been transmitted in Kampala. Obviously, in dense populations, diseases like this are more difficult to control, but my understanding is it's not in Kampala at this stage.
Gregory, is that a real concern that the disease will in fact spread to the capital and other densely populated areas in Uganda?
So as Amanda quite rightly said, this is a case which actually occurred in the west of the country in Kibaale district, and the person transferred to the capital to go to Mulago Hospital, which is the main infectious diseases teaching hospital in the whole country of Uganda. She was followed very closely. The people who treated her were followed very closely. No infections have occurred in Kampala, and the people who treated her are showing no signs of symptoms 10 days after the fact, and are so halfway into their incubation period. So for the moment, it is not an active concern in Kampala. The active concern and what we're focused on is Kibaale district in the west of the country.
And what is the cause of Ebola, Gregory? I mean, it's been linked to originating from monkeys as well as chimpanzees, from dead animals, even bats. What do you know?
Yeah, so to differentiate between the two, we believe that we don't know the origin is the simple answer. We believe the origin or its reservoir is somewhere in the rainforests of tropical Central Africa, and that there appear to be species of bats who can carry the virus without being affected by it. So they are vectors or transmitters of the virus, and they don't die from it. They in turn come into contact or live in the same places as primates do. And the supposition is that through some sort of transfer between the bats who don't get infected and primates such as chimpanzees and monkeys who do get infected, that's how the virus will come closer to humans. And once in a while, when a hunter or someone else goes into the forest and kills a primate, normally for food reasons, a chimpanzee or a monkey, and eats that diseased primate, the person then will fall sick and often dies. And what we see is the most common cause of the start or the origin of an Ebola outbreak is indeed someone who is normally a hunter, eats a diseased monkey, dies, and then at the funeral ceremony and the washing of the body before the actual burial of the person, because all the family members and other very close people to that family member touch the body during the washing ceremony, they all become infected, and that's how the disease multiplies and spreads.
And Amanda, are those the reasons as well why the disease keeps resurfacing in Africa? It's the third outbreak of Ebola in Uganda in 12 years.
Yeah, as WHO explained, I mean, we think that's where the reservoir is, and this is a very difficult terrain. I mean, the area that we're talking about has low levels of access to healthcare. People are reliant on bushmeat and food they grow themselves. Hygiene, water and sanitation is low. So we see lots of different diseases in this area and a number of different outbreaks, including Ebola, over the last several years.
And having said that, are Ugandan health officials, as well as the ministry, able to meet the needs of such a disease and taking care of those affected?
The Ugandan Ministry of Health has good experience in this. They've had recent outbreaks. Early last year, there was one index case and a full emergency appeal was launched and a response by the Ministry of Health and other partners. And there was only one index case. There was no other cases confirmed in that outbreak last year. They've been very quick to respond again this time. They've mobilised a number of agencies. They've set up a task force. They've got people on the ground and things are happening.
Michel, seeing as Ebola has an incubation period of between 2 to 21 days, so how likely is it that more cases will surface?
The point is the amount of virus you get when you touch the body, when you take care of a sick patient. More virus you get into your body, shorter will be the incubation time. So we can say that if we see in the next 10 days some case, it means that those cases have a very close relation with the sick patient. If you develop the disease after 15 days, after 20 days, it means that your contact was very weak and you have a better chance to survive. And normally there is not a lot of people in that case. So the next 10 days are very important to have a better idea about the dynamic of the disease.
And Michel, from what you know about this disease and this particular outbreak, because you were in Uganda when the last outbreak broke, what is different this time around?
The point is that the outbreak happened in 2007 was due to a new strain of Ebola virus, the Bundibundu strain. This strain was less aggressive. It means that the lethality was among 30 to 50%. This time we are confronted to the Ebola Sudan strain, the same that have touched Gulu in the year 2000. So this strain is more lethal. It's around 50 to 70%. It means also that you probably have less asymptomatic case in the population, that the disease is more visible this time than in the last outbreak.
And Michel, the health minister, in fact, said that this outbreak in Uganda initially went undetected, and that's because patients did not show typical symptoms. So why do you think that is? What type of strain are we talking about here?
We speak about the Sudan strain. The point, I think, that here in this specific case, the index case occur in a small village, and it has touched all, at the beginning, a lot of the same family member. And for those people who don't understand the evolution of this kind of disease, they think it's a witch doctor who hit a spell on their family. And so it's why you have always a delay between the start of an outbreak of an Ebola and the reaction when we identify the virus to put all the measures in place and the isolation, etc.
Well, as we said earlier, the Ebola virus is one of the deadliest that's known to man. It's spread by close personal contact and kills up to 90% of those who become infected, and many die within days of becoming infected, in fact. Now, no medicine or vaccine exists, and the virus causes fever and vomiting, and in some cases shuts down organs and causes unstoppable bleeding. Ebola has killed 1,200 people since it was discovered in 1976. Gregory, this is something you pointed out at the beginning of the program. In fact, there's no vaccine yet to Ebola. Why?
Well, it's something, again, I think many vaccines are driven by market demand, and because this is a disease which surfaces very rarely and doesn't have many cases, it's not something which would be a priority for vaccine manufacturers to develop a vaccine against.
Amanda?
No, I agree. I mean, it's definitely market driven, and it's a very small market for Ebola and for people that can't afford vaccines.
So if this outbreak had happened elsewhere, outside of Africa, where there was a bigger market for it, you think the international reaction would have been different, Amanda?
I mean, Ebola is the type of disease we see Hollywood movies made about, and I think, you know, this is the type of disease that causes fear and panic in communities. And I think, you know, the world reaction would be different if it was in a major Western city, perhaps. But the dynamic of the disease would also be very different. So, I mean, I think there's a number of diseases that occur more regularly that don't have vaccines that should be a priority, given the number of people infected and the number of people that are killed by this disease. Cholera, you know, kills many more people. So I think there's other priorities, especially in the developing world, for vaccines other than Ebola. And we have strategies to control the outbreaks and to intervene when the outbreaks do occur.
Michel, do you agree that there are other priorities to deal with in the developing world?
I will not say that in the sense that vaccine can be useful, especially if the vaccine have a post-exposure effect. For the moment, there is no vaccine like that on the market. So what the point is to develop more medicine to take care about the sick people. We must remember that Ebola outbreak have made something as 2,000 patients and 100,200 deaths since the beginning. So if you compare this to what happened with malaria, is the same amount of death that make malaria in one day. So the necessity of the vaccine is completely different. But what we are lacking, it's really specific medicine to take care about the sick patient. If you are admitted in an isolation unit now, we can help you to alleviate your suffering. We can give you kind of support treatment, and it can make a difference of 10-15% in the difference of dying. It's already something, but it's not enough. We need to have more experimental drugs that are tested in different laboratories available to try to cure more patients and to give more chance to the patients who are isolated in our care unit to survive in the isolation unit.
Gregory, so how much progress, in your opinion, has been made in finding these experimental drugs and finding a full vaccine to Ebola?
There's been very little progress. There are occasional tests and work that go on, but again, as we say, in terms of public health priorities, when several forms of hepatitis don't have a vaccine, when AIDS doesn't have a vaccine, when cholera doesn't have an effective vaccine or a completely effective vaccine, when malaria doesn't have an effective vaccine, there are, in public health terms, other diseases which have a hugely bigger burden than Ebola.
Right, but there's a lot of money that's so far been spent into AIDS research, for example, billions of dollars so far.
Well, I suppose it's a combination of market forces, public health priorities, and public pressure.
Amanda, how much do you think progress has been made in terms of finding a full vaccine, and how much ways more do we have to go?
I mean, I think WHO and MSF are, these are their priorities in terms of clinical treatment. From the Red Cross point of view, our focus is very much on looking after the community. So we don't necessarily engage in terms of whether vaccines should be developed. Obviously, we're in those discussions at a global level, but on the ground, our concern is very much around sensitising the community and getting messages out to stop the transmission. And at the moment, that's the best way and the fastest way we have to control the outbreak, and that's what we're focusing on.
Michel, do you agree with that? Is that the next best course of action at this point?
Yeah, the problem of the vaccine is that also we don't know where the outbreak of Ebola can emerge. If you have seen in Uganda, we have three different places in the country, in Congo also. So it means that you need to develop a vaccine to vaccinate millions and millions of people to protect very small community. And we know that the way to developing vaccine are not very effective for the moment in Africa. So
right, and that just brings the question.
The fight.
I apologize, Michel, for interrupting, but that just begs the question, what kind of ethical issues are there when it comes to licensing an Ebola vaccine? I mean, how does a company or someone arrange for a placebo control group when it comes to this?
Yes, for sure. The testing of the vaccine in population will be very, very difficult. So, as WHO has said also, we try first to focus on a curative treatment, something who can help the body to overcome the inflammatory action of the virus till the time of the body itself create antibody to eliminate the virus. The fact is this disease create a kind of storm inside your body. You overreact to the virus, and that is what is driving you to the death. The people who survive fight that till the time they have produced antibody in their body, and they cure themselves by against the virus. So really the point for a medical doctor is to try to help his patient touched by Ebola to survive during 2 weeks, the time the body of the people have developed its own antibody to clear the virus. And we lack about those kind of specific medicine for the moment. Even if this problem is seen in other disease, it's really a kind of too much inflammation reaction of the body who kill the patient.
Right. Amanda, the Ministry of Health, in fact, in Uganda was stating that people were delaying presenting themselves to seek treatment, partly because they believed that the cause of the illness was due to what they said were evil spirits. So how important is education and awareness when it comes to Ebola?
Yeah, I think it's key, and it's the main weapon that we have in terms of controlling the outbreak, finding the active cases and limiting the transmission. And I think, especially in these parts of Africa, there's a lot of superstition, witch doctors, spells, medicine, and this is the best explanation they have when something happens that they don't completely understand. And now it's really the role of the Ministry of Health and the other partners, including Red Cross, to get out there and to spread the message around how this disease is transmitted, how not to catch it, how to report index cases, and this is really what's happening at the moment. I spoke to Uganda colleagues only an hour ago, and we've got hundreds of volunteers mobilising over the next few days to get out house to house in the community so that people are aware of the causes and the ways to avoid catching this disease.
And how big a risk is it at this point that the disease actually spreads outside of Uganda to other countries in Africa as well as other countries worldwide?
I mean, it's always a concern, and I think it's why we have such a rapid response to this type of outbreak and why so many organisations work together on the ground. There's a lot of population movement in that area. It's close to the Democratic Republic of Congo border, and there's a lot of conflict on the other side. There is significant population movements there. So it's a concern, and it's one of the reasons we have to move quickly.
Michel, final thoughts to you. Could Ebola become a global problem, in fact, like AIDS has?
No, at this point I don't believe so. But what I want to add is that for sure we need to make education for the population. But when an outbreak happens, what is very important is create confidence with the family who have been touched by the disease. All the measures who can make obligatory quarantine, who make a military circle around the area, all those things are not functioning. What we need really is to create this confidence between the medical team and the family who have been touched by Ebola. Even if at the beginning the people are not agreed to go to the isolation unit because they are feared to die there, because for sure the disease is very hard. At least we need to keep the contact. At least we need to see them each day to try to learn to them the conduct to avoid the contamination inside the family. But what we never we never can be confronted to. It's people who are runaway, who are going to hide themselves. If this occurs, it's much more complicated to control the disease. If you have the confidence with the family touched by the disease, then you can control the outbreak.
All right, so we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much for joining us. My guests in Geneva, Gregory Härtl, also in Geneva, Amanda McClelland, and over in Brussels, Dr. Michel van Herp. Thank you very much for joining us on Inside Story. If you want to send us your feedback, you can email your thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.